All right, so Bomberman. So we're going to have a room which allows you to host the game. If you join a session, use TCP/IP. So TCP/IP is a special addressing system. It allows you to check to see, or it's basically like an address for like your house. Each computer gets its own unique one, and if you put it in, then you're allowed to basically dial into that particular computer. In order to find out what your TCP/IP address is, on any computer that you have administrator access on, there's a run menu. I'm in Windows 7, so I just have to type it in the bottom bar. But you do run cmd, which is the command line. And it pops up a little DOS window. If you do the command ipconfig and hit enter, it shows you what your IP address is, IPv4 address. So mine is 10.65.172.171. So when you actually need to connect to somebody else's, you can find that out. It turns out in here, you can also just not put in an IP address, and GameMaker will assume that you're all connected on the same LAN network, which is what everything in this lab has. I have a base game that I've put in the README in GameMaker 2 called Bomberman Base. I would suggest you start with that, at least to begin with. The reason why is there's a number of things that are built into this. And I'll throw this out on my website as well. So, multiplayer games. Some things that we have to know is how to deal with connecting from one computer to another. So I'm in the help file right now looking at this. So I'm setting up a connection. Most of the commands start with mplay for multiplayer. So there's different ways you could actually connect. There's something called an IPX connection. TCP/IP, where you give it an address. If you have a modem, you could do that. You could actually directly connect with a serial port. So there's different ways that you can make a connection from one computer to another. We're going to use this TCP/IP one. And then you can ask, like, what its connection status is. And you can even ask GameMaker, what do you think your IP address is? So if you wanted to display that on the screen, you could do that. All right, other things. So once you have a connection to wherever you're going to be, then you actually have to create a game. So there's one player that's going to be the host, and there's going to be other people that join the hosted game. So we need to make sure that one person creates the session, the game you're going to have, and then other people look for that session and join it. So to create a session, there's a name you give it, how many players are allowed, and what the host player's name is. If you're joining, what you'll end up doing is you're trying to find all the sessions that are currently at the network you're connecting to. You can check to see if a particular named session is there, and then you can try and join it, giving your player name. And then you can check to see if you're connected, so on. So that's the status of a particular game. You can ask players about like who they are, so you can find how many other players there are. If you know which number it is, you can get their name, and you also have a unique ID number as well. So that's how you can deal with particular players. We're going to use shared data as our way of doing it. You can also use messages is the other way, where you actually send messages which have basically sending to particular players or to all players particular messages. That's more efficient if you only send messages to people that need to know what's going on, but it's probably easier just to do it with the shared data idea. Shared data, the idea with this is basically there are local variables which each object has. There are global variables which the whole game has, and above all of that, there are network variables which every game has. So the idea with this is that if I write a value out to the network, everybody that reads that variable, everybody gets the same thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this to update X and Y positions of all the players. So I'm going to pick a particular slot out on the network to write my X value to and my Y value every step. And everybody else is going to be reading my X and Y position and updating my clone on all of their computers. The clone is basically the dummy player that's just listening for where he's supposed to go and just does it. I'm controlling my own player. My player has all the controls. There are dummy players on the other side that are like, move to where he moved. So that's going to be how we're going to do all of our stuff. Now, they're just numbered between 0 and, what is that, 1,000,000? So it's up to us to decide which slots do what things. This is where constants become really important so that you don't accidentally write things over each other. So that's the basics of it. So going into the Bomberman base game. So in this, there are actually 4 rooms. There's a connecting room, which has 2 buttons, host and join, and there's this other controller object called connect. Connect, when it very first starts the game, launches a window that asks which LAN you're connecting to. And then when you click on host, you create a session, or join, you join a session. Once you are the host, it asks you to create a session name, or who you are, and it sends you to the host waiting room. The host waiting room is different because he's the one that allows the game to start. And he's constantly also drawing who all's in the game. The show waiting object does that. If you join, you go to the join waiting, who just sits around and waits until the game starts. You don't actually get to decide because the host is the one controlling it. Once the game is started, everybody moves to a game room, which I've just given a different background for now. Eventually, we'll need to actually make a play area in this room. So to begin with, when we first connect, I created a variable called IP address. getString pops up a message box, which allows you to enter something in. So I say, enter an IP address, or nothing for LAN. By the way, in a string, if you put in a number sign, the thing on 3, that actually puts in a return, so it goes to the next line. After the comma, I just have empty quotes here. This is what starts in the default field. So in the text field, it's going to start with that text by default, which is nothing. You have to put that in, though. So if, when I first create a TCP/IP connection to this address, does it return true or false? So this is going to try and create a connection to whatever IP address you put in. If it says true, that means, hey, we're good to go, and we can go ahead and look at the room with host and join. Now, if it says false, that means that I can't connect to the local network, whatever, or the IP address, whichever it is. And basically, all I'm going to do at that point is say, hey, no connection, and just end the game, because you can't play the game, so why are you still playing? So this happens in connect_o. I just run the connect script. That's all I'm doing.